Hello my people, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I encourage you to subscribe and like and also comment. Today I want to go out of my way to talk about something that's out of the way of the usual stuff I talk about. A local show that has really been popular, the one called Becky on Citizen TV. I think Becky has lost its way somewhere along the road. It was a very promising show when it began, but right now it's just going sideways and it's dealing with stuff. And the main issues that Becky should be pursuing, it's not pursuing anymore. And I don't know, not a lot of people would consider my voice as influential, but I hope that we can find a way of improving Becky so that it becomes a show that we can all watch in a better way. When Becky began, it was really exciting. It was talking about the famous Katanas, this wealthy family. And the story, judging by the title, was supposed to be about their house help, their humble Kenyan house help, this beautiful young woman called Becky. And the story has evolved since then. But the truth of the matter is, in my view, in my very humble view, I'm not saying my view is the perfect one. I'm just saying this is my view, my opinion, that Becky has slid off the tracks. And in my view, honestly, I think that the script writer has lost the plot, or the director, whoever is in charge of creating the Becky plot. I think they've lost it, and I'll give a reason. I'll give reasons why. One, just at the very beginning, the show is called Becky, but it's not about Becky. Becky is on the wayside. She's not the center of the story. The story, if you had to give it the name of one of the characters, it's probably more about Trisha. They should have called it Trisha, or they should have called it the Katanas, or the Jabulanis, or something, or they could have called it Junior. Because all these other people play a more prominent role in the show than Becky, after whom it's named. That's one. The second reason why I think Becky has lost the plot is that it's not completing the story as it starts. For instance, there's a doctor who misdiagnosed Mrs. Katana. What was her name? Martha. The doctor who misdiagnosed Martha came and disappeared, and the story, which was really interesting, disappeared with it. Then there was a doctor who was having an affair with Trisha. That story was barely touched and it disappeared. And then there's the story of Martha's death. That one came and disappeared, and even after Martha's death, we're not seeing any investigations to find who killed Martha. There are lots of unbelievable things, especially because I think the story particularly went off track at Martha's death. And one of the places in which it lost track was the fact that Martha's death was so unconvincing that many of the viewers kept saying Martha is not dead, because the way it was presented was totally unconvincing. And then the other thing is, in a world full of CCTV cameras, Chantel puts a drug on Junior's drink, and there's nobody to see it. We know CCTV cameras are in all public places, because in almost all restaurants in Kenya, people steal laptops, people do stuff, and the restaurant owners want to be responsible. They want to be able to account for what happens in their establishments. So that Chantel can poison Junior, or can spike Junior's drink and get away with it, that is unbelievable. For me, there the story got lost. That was a great chance. Then the other thing, Becky had several experiences with Trisha, one of which was the lost necklace, where Trisha was trying to frame Becky. That's a good story that should never have just disappeared like that. Among many other things, Becky sees Trisha stealing the documents from the lawyer's envelope, and it just goes on like that. Like, there are lots of stories within Becky that are never completed. Instead, now we're left with this petty, silly stories about Trisha jumping from relationship to relationship, and suddenly, what's her name? She's called Lexi, being chained She's come into wealth and she's been transformed into a vicious, malicious, constantly angry and unlovely woman. I mean, those could be nice stories, but they shouldn't be the center of the story. The center of the story is something different, and I'm gonna just speak about it. But I think those are some of the ways in which the story, the Becky show, has gone off track. It's lost its way. It's going around creating some really crazy stuff. And I must tell you, the relationship between Trisha and the Jabulani brother completely disgusted me. Why would the writer of the script or the director major on that and bring it as the center of the story when the actual thrilling parts of the story are going unexplored? Surely, yeah, you could do better. I also am getting to the point whereby if the writers of the script or the director, whoever is directing the story, tells us that Amelia is having an affair with Sanchez, that is gonna happen. That's how much the story has got confused. I think it could have been better. Now, these are my suggestions about how the story can still be made better. First of all, make Becky the center of the story. You call the show by her name, by all means, make her the center of it, for God's sake. Why would you call the story one title and then make the story something totally different? But the second part I want to suggest, we can still take the story back. It's not all lost. If Becky is made the center of the story, then we can start the story at the point where Becky saw Trisha steal the documents from the lawyer's envelope. Now, just right there is a problem. The Katanas are a wealthy family. If you know anything about wealthy families, they deal with high-flying lawyers. And most of those lawyers not only know the inside of the law book, they also know the inside of the legal system. Such a lawyer most likely would be a gray-haired guy. He's a guy with experience. He's a guy who's been around for long. He's a guy who probably knows any of the top judges by name. That's a guy who's invested in his network. He's not going to be a young guy like the guy we saw there. The second part of that, those high-flying lawyers don't come walking in. They come steaming in with a German car or something like that. A Mercedes usually, or an Audi for that matter. And they carry important legal documents in a briefcase that is locked with a code, not an envelope that Trisha can dip her fingers into and fish out the documents. So there you guys missed the script. Now, that said, when Trisha was fishing out the documents, Becky saw her. And that should have been the point at which you bring Becky at the center of the story. Becky's annoyed because Trisha has been pushing her buttons. Trisha has been annoying her. It's time for Becky to bring out her claws and start scratching. So Becky begins to investigate. What are the documents that Trisha stole? And she follows up because she saw Trisha take the documents and pocket them and take them upstairs. So Becky can start investigating, sneak into Junior and Trisha's room and find those documents and reconstruct. If perhaps Trisha has already hidden them, she can then begin to investigate. Make Becky the driver of the story. Make her the supergirl of the story. Let her be the one doing the investigations. So Becky sees this and begins to investigate Trisha. It is Becky who begins to unravel Trisha's duplicitous lifestyle. Whatever Trisha has been doing, it is Becky who gives us the story. Becky then becomes the center of the story to justify the story being named after her. The other thing, even another part in which the show failed was in Martha's death. When Martha dies of poisoning, that should have been the center of conversation of the relatives who came to discuss everything to do with the burial. That's what happens. When someone dies, you can say, Pole sana, and all that. But when someone has been killed, when someone has been poisoned, that becomes the discussion point. And that should have made a nice fraction of the show. Just the relatives. Did you hear? Did you hear? She was poisoned. Who poisoned her? Now, something else, that's where Becky comes in. She begins to talk to all those people to find out more details. That's what investigators do, because assume if Becky is going to be the center of the story, she's going to drive the story, and she's going to drive it by investigating who Trisha is, what happened to Martha, and stuff like that. The other thing, the detective that came to investigate Martha's death tells us that everybody who's involved in Martha's death is going to be caught. At a time when we've not been told, it's not been confirmed that Martha has been poisoned. So where did that detective get that? Two, detectives who investigate scene of crime stuff don't go alone. They go a large team. They're forensics, they're detectives to talk with people, they're guys who brush the door handles and go to the cups and plates that were used to during the party to welcome Lexi in. They dust all that for fingerprints. They try to find out who was here, and they call everybody, or at least they ask them to come to the station. They talk to everyone who was there and ask them, did you see something? What happened during that Lexi party? And on and on. That's how it goes. You don't have a single guy coming there to tell us that whoever was involved is going to be caught. No stones will be left unturned. So there you guys missed the show. Going back to Becky. So Becky begins to investigate. She unravels the stuff about Trisha, and it's also going to be Becky who unravels the stuff about how Martha came to possess Jabulani's things, how she was able to dispossess Lexi and become the owner, all that stuff about how Amelia was pushed out and on and on. That is an interesting story, but if the story is going to be called Becky, by all means, please, for God's sake, make Becky the center of it. Make Becky the investigator. Let Becky run the show. When I think of Becky, the name, and when I look at her, and when I see the stuff that's happening in the show, I sort of get the impression that Becky can be some kind of trinity. For the guys who watch The Matrix, there's a tough girl there called Trinity, and Becky has the body, seems to me like has the character to be equally tough, and so she's well qualified to be able to pursue this thing. You know, an intelligent Kenyan girl who's going after Trisha, especially one good, determined lady going after a bad girl. I think that's an interesting story. You can actually make the story about Becky chasing down Trisha. I think it can be a thriller. I think it can be a wonderful story. Now, as Becky is investigating all this, and Becky finds out everything about Martha, it is also Becky who will find that Martha died of poisoning, and that gives her more ammunition to go after Trisha. And Becky pursues Trisha, and as she investigates and goes to the place where Trisha claims her mother was buried, and she finds all that is false. She talks to all those people who were there, like the gentleman who said that was the grave of his wife. We want to see Becky interviewing that guy, talking with that guy and investigating. Now, you'd ask, how would someone who's not trained in investigations be able to do that? There are many ways. Intelligence. If Becky is intelligent, she will be able to find that out. But the other thing, the lawyer knows a lot more. Becky can work with the lawyer, and the lawyer can connect her with the DCI guys. So Becky works and helps the DCI guys unravel the story. We have examples have been set for us in many of these thriller movies and books where an ordinary person with a hard nose for investigations, a person with curiosity, goes after the bad guys by simply investigating what's happening. And Becky can be that. So she goes after all these guys, she investigates, talks to the gentleman whose wife was buried in that grave, finds out more about Trisha, and begins to warn Junior that, you know, we had a relationship, we had a baby, and I love you, and I suspect you love me and all that, but I want to warn you about your wife. Okay? That's also thrilling. Major on that. There are lots of parts you can make the Becky story major on and make it a thriller, a lovely thing to watch. You go back there, guys, and bring Becky to the center of the story. It would be Becky who finds out when Junior swears that he wasn't having anything going on with Chantel, It is Becky who, knowing who her former boyfriend is, begins to believe him and begins to investigate. It will be Becky who goes to look for CCTV. If there's no CCTV, she talks to the manager, what happened here, and the manager would tell her that Junior looked so unwell that in fact when they were going to the room, it was Chantel who was holding him, and that would give Becky the idea that Junior's drink had been spiked, that he had been drugged. So you don't fly over the stories and let them go. Becky would remember after Martha's death, she would remember that Martha was once misdiagnosed with cancer, and Becky would be the one to look for that doctor and find that that doctor was killed, and she would investigate and find that it's Martha who arranged the doctor's death. That would be the work of Becky. That would be a thrilling stuff, I think, for us all to find out. How about the doctor whom Trisha was having an affair with? It would be Becky, knowing everything that she knows, including the fact that at some point Martha went to see that doctor and she had this tough guy with him who manhandled the doctor. Becky would be able to trace that tough guy, even using her friend, what's his name? Blackie. Yeah, they would get this guy and talk with him, and this guy would be able to reveal everything, and Becky would still find out that Trisha is actually not normal. She's kind of sociopath, as Americans call them, because someone who cheats like that is not normal. That's not normal. And it would be Becky to unravel all these multiple identities and falsities about Trisha. And we'd enjoy the show. Also, something else I want to mention right here is that shows like these thrillers, because it's always about bad people and good people, and the bottom line is always that crime doesn't pay. So we don't want to see Trisha constantly running rings around people, and it's like everybody else is stupid. They're not reading into Trisha's activities. At least if everybody else is stupid, let Becky be the sharp chick who goes after Trisha. So it can't be that Trisha is doing all these wrong things and nobody, not Junior, not Becky, not Martha, is reading into it. We want to see Becky unravel even the issue of the necklace that got lost and basically gather evidence against Trisha. I think that would make a wonderful story, guys. Please give us that. Go back to the script. All this idea about all these nonsensical shenanigans, about weird relationships, etc., is really wasting time. I remember I missed Becky for 1 week at some point, and when I came back to watch, it hadn't moved along. The monkeys just changed positions, but the story hadn't moved along one bit. Give us a story we run home to watch, guys. Please, please, I beg, for the sake of members of my family who love the show and for the sake of other people. We don't want to start trashing Becky as, unworthy of our time. So, assuming that Becky is the center of the story, it will be Becky to tell us about how Lexi was dispossessed, what happened when Lexi and her dad were involved in an accident. All that, let Becky be the one who finds out. In fact, let Becky even talk to people, some of the neighbors who might have witnessed it, and find cameras, find video clips and CCTV footages, whatever, of what happened, and show us how Lexi was rescued from the burning car and all that stuff. Give us a story that's credible, guys. Give us a story that's thrilling, a story that's nice to watch. And it will be Becky who goes out to look for Lexi and find her. Because that way you avoid all these weird coincidences that don't usually happen in real life. Like Becky. I mean, it was easy to accept that Becky gets a job at a place in the home where her former boyfriend is a son. That's a coincidence that we can accept. But all these others are too much, what are the other coincidences? I can't remember them offhand. But the coincidences are just too much. Like, how Lexi comes from the street and gets to hear about the Jabulanis and stuff and begins to realize that Martha was her mother. Instead of making it coincidence, which is incredulous, it's hard to believe, Why don't you let Becky be the one who investigates? Okay, after her relationship with Tito ends, and she goes to look for Tito, she finds Tito has this friend called Lexi, and it's Becky who then connects the dots and brings Lexi home. That's a good story, I think. I think I could say more. I'm forgetting some of the points I wanted to say, but that's just what I think. That's what I think. I think those are some of the interesting ways in which we can enjoy Becky. I want to say, I mentioned there that these stories usually involve bad person, good person, and maybe some people in between or outside of it. So Becky going after Trisha. I think for the most part, some significant people in my life who watched the show asked me, when Becky was still in a relationship with Junior, she asked, how can Becky keep saying that I'll stand by you, sweetheart, and offer no earth-moving advice when Junior talks about killing Lexi and all those guys? Why can't Becky say, sweetheart, don't muddy your fingers, don't bloody your fingers, you're not going to kill anybody, there's a better way we can work through this, and Becky comes up with ideas for them to go forward. The other thing, if Becky is going to be the center of the story, she needs to have an iron will, and she needs to be a moral weather vane. She needs to be a moral character. So she's the one who tells we're not going to murder anybody. She's the one who says Trisha needs to pay for her sins. This idea about Becky now becoming the stereotypical Kenyan girl who's after money. When Junior doesn't have money, she leaves him. That really is, the story went off the track there. It shouldn't have happened like that. We want Becky at the center of the story. We don't want Becky outside doing funny things. And Chantel was really another kind of Trisha. We don't want her committing suicide. We want her caught. We want her chased down. We want to see her panicking. We want to see her running. We want to see Becky going after her, chasing her through the slums of Nairobi, through the streets of Nairobi, going after her, discovering who she is, where she's coming from, because we know very little about Chantel after all. It would be Becky. Even if at the end of the day Chantel commits suicide, let it be because Becky is going after her and she doesn't want to be caught. We want to see that thrilling chase. A thriller is always about the chase. Let us see that, guys, please. And at this point, I don't know how soon Becky will end, but I think it would have really been nice at this point if we were like midway through the show. So the rest of the show is dedicated to Becky unraveling Trisha's identity, unraveling Martha's identity, going after Trisha step by step by painful but thrilling step, chasing down Trisha until she nails her. And please don't kill Trisha. We want to see her caught, arrested, maybe beaten up. We want some justice for all the crime she did. We know that she'll try and bribe her way through the legal system, the crime, whatever system, whatever we call it, I don't know. She'll try and bribe her way, but we want to see her nailed. We want to see her suffering, cornered, panicking, where she doesn't know which way to go. We want to see all the things, all the terrible things Trisha has done. We want to see it come upon her head, courtesy of Becky. Please give us a thrilling story. All these ideas, all these other funny things, really, please forget it. I mean, it's not interesting enough. You're going to lose viewers, I think. At least I'm struggling to keep watching. And I'm thinking that there must be other people like me. Please do this. I say this with humility. I recognize you guys are making a lot of sacrifice. I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into what you're giving us. And I want to honor that. I want to say thank you for all the beautiful work you did. But I fear that you're losing it. Please go back. And just a small piece of advice. When it comes to how to investigate matters, I'm a journalist, so I know what it means to investigate some of this stuff. I can tell you, if you talk to the DCI haven't had a good name, especially with bodies being found in Yala, River Yala, and all that in other places. They don't have such a wonderful name. This would be a nice way for them to show us their professionalism. Bring them on board. Ask them, How is a scene of crime set? How do you guys go about investigating your stuff? Let them come on board. Let them show you. Either they can lend an actual current DCI guy to help you out, or they can just tell you the story of how to do it, and you get some guys to act the part. But also, the newspapers, the media have a lot of stories of all the stuff that has happened, all the crimes of passion that have happened, and you can just follow that and what the investigators found out in the actual life stories that we have. There are many, there are tons of them in Kenya. Just follow how that happened and put that into the story. Okay? Yeah. All these other stuff, please. Thank you. I hope you listen. I hope I have blessed you. I hope I've given you good ideas to follow on. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. We're going to have more of this. Thank you. Bye. Happy New Year.